Namaste and good morning. Good morning to all of you. Let's start our Tuesday class with the prayers. Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhu Bhavaswaha Tatsavitra Varene Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityurma Amritam Gamya Om Senavavtu Senabhunaktu Saviryam Karvavai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's open our Mahabharata books. And we're going to start the new Parva today, Sauptika Parva. And it starts with page number 531. So in Hastinapura, the war is over. 18 days that have been like 18 years longer. The Pandavas ride back to Kurukshetra. Custom demands they should enter the vanquished enemy's camp, and they do now, blasting on their conches. The Panchjanya and the Devdat resound above the rest. Krishna is the most cheerful one in the company. More than anything, he does not want the sons of Pandu dejected at what happened in Smant Panchaka. And you remember in Smant Panchaka, there was a duel between Bhim and Duryodhana. He does not want their moment of victory dimmed by remorse. They find the Kaurav camp, which had once teemed with 11 Akshonis, deserted. Nothing stirs save a twilight breeze, which murmurs endlessly about all the killing and dying on yawning Kurukshetra. The last shafts of the sunlight, that desolation with scarlet and gold. As soon as they arrive, Krishna turns to Arjuna and says, "Climb down from the chariot, bring the Gandhiva and your quivers with you." Arjuna is puzzled, but does as Krishna asks. Krishna puts down his whip and reins, and he too alights from the white rath that Agni once gave Arjuna in the Khandava one. The Pandavas stand watching curiously. The moment Krishna climbs down, there is a flash of light above the chariot. On the flag with Hanuman's form, they see the immortal Vanar fly out and vanish into the sky. The banner is empty of its emblem. That is not all. The white chariot bursts into flames. It burns like a tinder. The Gandharva horses are ablaze, and in a few moments, all that remains of chariot and steeds is a mound of ashes. Arjun cries to Krishna, "My lord, what is this?" Krishna, "I don't understand." Krishna's face is stern as he says, "Their purpose in the world is served." Arjun, your chariot was struck by the Brahmastras of Drona and Karan, by Ashwatthama's Agneya Astra. The truth is that both chariot and horses were consumed long ago, but as long as I sat at your chariot head and drove your horses, they did not perish. Now we have no further use for them, and they are ashes. All things in this world exist for a purpose. When their purpose is served, they cease to be. Krishna's face softens. More gently now he says, and so it is with the men, Arjun. Each man is sent out on this mysterious journey called life, and he comes into the world to achieve a purpose. Once his mission is over, the earth has no more need of him. It is so with all of us, even me. I have come into the world for a mission, and as soon as my mission is complete, I will leave. He sees the look of alarm on Anju's face. My tasks are not yet over, and neither are yours or your brothers. We have much to do still. But don't grieve for your chariot and horses. They accomplished what they were created for, and now they have gone. Krishna turns to Yudhishthir. He takes his hand and says, "You have won the war, and I'm proud of you. It is the custom for the victors to spend the night outside their defeated enemy's camp. Let us spend the night somewhere in these woods." Yudhishthir is deeply moved by the miracle of the chariot. He says fervently to Krishna, "My Lord, we have won the war only because of you. Now I understand that Vyas Muni once said to me, where there is a dharma, Krishna is, and where Krishna is, there is victory." Krishna says, "You and your brothers fought heroically. You deserve to have victory." They ride a short way and decide to stay beside the river flowing nearby. They have just settled under some trees. When Krishna sees a shadow on Yudhishthir's face, he asks, "Why are you distraught?" Yudhishthir has turned pale. He says slowly, "By your grace we have won the war, and the earth is ours now. But Krishna, I fear the wrath of Gandhari. She is a Bhagat and a righteous queen, and she is a mother who has lost all her sons. She could burn the world with her grief, and she may curse us when she hears how Duryodhan died. I beg you, go to Hastinapur and pacify Gandhari." Krishna is thoughtful. He says softly, "You're right. Gandhari must not curse you. There are others to bear her wrath. I will go at once." Krishna has his own chariot fetched and sets out for the Kuru capital. Meanwhile, hiding among the trees in Sumant Panchak, Sanjay saw Duryodhan fall. Shocked and weeping, he flew back to Hastinapur, his arms raised above his head. He came wailing into the palace and Dhritarashtra's presence. Dhritarashtra sat with Gandhari and his daughters-in-law around him. Vidur was there as well. Sanjay ran in and cried, "My lord, fate has robbed us of everything we had." Then he could not go on, but sobbed like a child. Water was fetched for him, and when he drank, he grew calmer. He managed to say, "The war is over and we have lost. Shalli and Shakni were killed, Uluk is dead," and he broke down again. Vidur asked, "What of Duryodhan?" Sanjay cried as if he had lost his own son. Bhim felled Duryodhan in a Gada Yudh. He lies dying at Smant Panchak. Gandhari slumped to the floor from her throne. Dhritarashtra swayed where he sat, and he swooned. The world spun before Vidur's eyes, and he clutched the arms of his chair. Duryodhan's queens and his brothers' wives set up a lament. Many of them fell unconscious. The blind king revived in a short while and then fainted again, and thus twice or thrice. The palace maids came to Gandhari. They sprinkled water on her face and held sharp salts under her nose. She lay as if she was dead. After a while, Gandhari and Dhritarashtra revived, and poor Vidur did his best to comfort them. Vyas arrived opportunely. Even he could hardly quieten the surging tide of grief. Gandhari wailed hysterically, beating her breast, and Dhritarashtra sobbed and sobbed. It is now that Krishna appears in the Kuru palace and is shown into the Sabha. Tears well in his eyes when he sees Dhritarashtra and Gandhari in their sorrow. He comes forward to take their hands. The presence of the avatar infuses their hearts with mysterious strength. Full of mercy, Krishna sits near that king and queen, speaking tenderly to them, stroking their hands, their faces, as if he was comforting two children. Gradually, their sobbing subsides. Sorrow's storm blows more quietly in their aged bodies. In their moment of crisis, they clearly feel the love of the Dark One, transcending their grief, transcending everything, a timeless, unshakable love. Like children with a father, they let him console them with his gentle words, his healing touch. When they are calmer, Krishna says to Gandhari, "Do you remember the day I last came to Hastinapur? I came on a mission of peace, and Duryodhan plotted to take me his hostage. I have not forgotten how you stopped him then, Gandhari. Do you remember what you said to your son? You said, 'Where there is a dharma, there is victory.' So it has turned out, O queen." Today also I have come on a mission of peace. I have come to beg you not to blame the Pandavas for what has happened. Yudhishthir grieves that he has caused you such sorrow. You know how much the sons of Pandu wanted to prevent this war. They implored you to give them just 5 towns, and they would be content. But Duryodhan was adamant. I want you to recall clearly that it was not the Pandavas, but your son who was responsible for the war and all the tragedy it brought. You must not be tempted to blame Pandu's sons for Duryodhan's sins. They have suffered enough for a lifetime. You must welcome them home with love. Most of all, Gandhari, you must not turn your wrath on them. It will not be dharam if you curse them for a war they never wanted. He pauses to let what he says sink in, then continues. You don't need me to tell you in what esteem Yudhishthir holds you both. Now there is no Kuru prince left, save a son of Pandu to sit upon the ancient throne of Hastinapura. I beg you again, Gandhari, do not hate Kunti's sons. You are so pure that you can consume the very earth with your anger. All will truly be lost if you turn your fury on the Pandavas. Gandhari's shoulders shake and she says in confession, I am glad you came, Krishan. No one but you could have calmed me, for my reason had left me, and I would have done some harm to Kunti's sons. Truly, you know how to speak to the heart. Grief's rage has left me, and I see clearly again, I will be just to the Pandavas, I will not harm them. Krishan takes her hands, Gandhari breaks down again and sobs piteously. The grief she has held behind the floodgates of anger flows from her, and the avatar's compassion washes over the pain. Gandhari composes herself and says, with my sons all dead, I have only you to comfort me. Don't abandon me, Krishan. The Dark One sits with them for a while longer, consoling them with his presence of grace. Suddenly, a premonition of evil seizes him. He divines a sinister plot that has taken root in the mind of a Brahman warrior. Krishan rises and says quickly, the Pandavas are in danger. Give me your leave. I must go at once. Dhritarashtra whispers, hurry, you must protect my nephews at any cost. They are all this kingdom has left. Krishan flies back to Yudhishthir and his brothers in Dejatra, his chariot of the air. He is relieved to find them safe beside the river, under the trees where he left them. They have Satyaki with them, but all the others have returned to the Pandav camp. Krishan tells them how Dhritarashtra and Gandhari were pacified. They were waiting for their nephews to return to Hastinapur. He also tells them of the danger he had sensed from Ashwatthama. You are in mortal peril. We must be on our guard tonight. Next chapter, the White Owl's Lesson. Sanjay cannot help himself. He has to go back to Smant Panchak, where Duryodhan lies dying. It is twilight when he arrives, and peering carefully through the trees, he sees the Kaurav is alone. He lies breathing on the ground, and sharp hisses of breath escape him when the pain is unendurable. Duryodhan rolls from side to side. He is covered in mud. Tears course trails down his ashen face, and he sobs pitiably with the torment. Sanjay thinks his heart will break, seeing him like that. Duryodhan, who had been lord of all his service, master of the earth, no one had been as powerful or as wealthy as the man who now lies in the dirt, his very manhood crushed, and no one beside him as he dies slowly in the wilderness. Here lies a king whose feet had never felt the paving of a street, one whose palace had been like a god's temple. Sanjay thinks of how once Duryodhan would pass through his city, the glittering retinue that went with him, and he riding his caparisoned elephant like Indra himself on Eravat. Where is all that majesty now? How pitiless fate is that she lays the sovereigns of the earth so low. Everything lost, the Kaurav lies wriggling in the dust. Duryodhan presses his palms hard against the earth as agony rips through him. He grits his teeth, his chest heaves, and now and again a helpless cry is torn from his lips when the pain crests. At times his body twitches in spasms, at others he shivers uncontrollably. During brief remissions, he shakes his head and growls at his helplessness. Sanjay runs forward and kneels beside his dying prince. Duryodhan sees Sanjay and at once he grows calm. He lies back with a sigh and Sanjay takes his hand. Slowly, with an intense effort, Duryodhan speaks to him. Sanjay, what is loving soul you are, that you have come back to me. My friend, I am in hell, but my life refuses to leave this broken body. Sanjay's tears fall onto his hands. Duryodhan smiles wanly and says, don't cry for me, Sanjay. I am very near Swarg now, but it seems I have to pay for my sins and be purified before I reach the blessed place. A livid spasm tears through him again, and he gasps. In a while, it seems to pass, and he says weakly, I can hardly bear it. Look at me, Sanjay. This is I, Duryodhan, who just a few days ago had Bhishma, Drona, Karan, Kripa, Shalya, Kritvarman, Dushashan, and 1,000 Kshatriyas to fight for me. I was the lord of 11 Akshonis, and I was so certain I would win the war. Look at me now. Duryodhan weeps. Speaking exhausts him, and he falls silent for a while. Then he says, Sanjay, will you do something for me? Anything, my lord, sobs Sanjay. Find Acharya Kripa, Kritvarman, and Ashwatthama. Tell them that Bhim struck me down with a low blow. Tell them I'm still alive and I want to see them before I die. Then go to Hastinapur and tell Dhritarashtra and Gandhari what happened. Tell my mother that her son died like a Kshatriya. Say I did not run from battle but fought to the last, my head held high. Tell her I was happy as I died and I would find Devlok for myself. Tell her, good Sanjay, I died without any regret. Again he subsides, gasping. His hand goes limp in Sanjay's, and he whispers, go now, my friend, and send my 3 warriors to me quickly. Then, in sweet relief from his ordeal, he has fainted. Sanjay runs through his forest, calling to the 3 warriors as loudly as he dares. They are not far and seeking Duryodhan themselves, since they do not know where he went from the Dvipayan lake. Sanjay tells them everything that happened and shows them the way to Smant Panchak. He says, choking, I have a message from Duryodhan to take to Hastinapur, and I cannot bear to see him as he is. Sanjay turns back to the city. Word of Duryodhan's fall has spread like fire in Hastinapur, and some of the people come out into the wilds to see him, but they find him unconscious and growing afraid of the jungle as night draws near. They turn back home. One tale tells how they bring Duryodhan's youngest son to see his dying father. The Kaurav cannot take even the child onto his lap, where his wife, called Panchali, to sit and waves him away in misery. Though his pain is intolerable, Duryodhan refuses to be carried back to Hastinapur. Kripa, Kritvarman, and Ashwatthama find their king alone, lying there like the sun fallen onto the earth, the disk of the full moon shrouded in a fog, or a great tiger struck down by hunters still raging. He is conscious, his brow furrowed, squirming on the ground, crying out at times. Ashwatthama kneels beside him and takes his hands. When he sees the bloody ruin below Duryodhan's waist, dizziness overcomes Drona's son. When the others revive him, Ashwatthama clutches Duryodhan's hands and cries, what has this world come to that a king like you, O Lord of the earth, lie alone in your final hour? It is a vile world and nothing in it is permanent. Duryodhan manages a wry smile and his voice, lower than a whisper, says, all things in this world only die, Ashwatthama, and this is the end written for me in fate's book. But don't grieve for me, my friends. I am not sorry my life ends here. Remember that as soon as breath leaves this body, I will be in Devlok. And in heaven, my brothers and my Karan are waiting for me. I see everything clearly now. All this is fate, and there's no use blaming anyone for it. His chest heaves again in mortal exhaustion. Duryodhana wipes his tears and brushes aside the dust matted hair that has fallen over his face. Ashwatthama blazes up in anger. The sons of Pandu are the worst sinners. They cover themselves in a cloak of dharma, but look what they have done to you. They killed my father dishonorably, and they have done the same to you. Duryodhan, just say the word, and this very night I will kill the Pandavas. I will kill them under Krishna's eyes. They are a plague upon the earth. They must not be left alive. Duryodhan's eyes fill. He had always thought that Ashwatthama was partial to the Pandavas, and now here he is swearing to kill them for his sake. The Kaurav summons the last of his strength and says to Kripa, Acharya, bring me water from the river. When the Kripa complies, Duryodhan says, sprinkle Ashwatthama with the water. Make him the new Senapati of my army. Sadly, solemnly, Kripa performs the ritual. He intones the mantras to make Ashwatthama supreme commander of the Kuru army. Ashwatthama rises, his face dripping, his eyes shining as if he has been given command of 1,000,000 men. He kneels again beside Duryodhan. The dying Kaurav lays his hand on his warrior's head. Ashwatthama clasps him and whispers fiercely, I will not fail you, my lord. Revenge shall be ours tonight. The other two embrace their king and then leave him there, alone once more. As night falls, they make their way south, tiredly towards the Pandav camp. This camp is built on the hem of some woods. Ashwatthama, his army of two, arrive in those woods. They find a clear, lotus-laden pool and quench their thirst from it. They move on towards the edge of the trees and hear sounds of celebration coming from the Pandav camp. Too tired even to think of attacking the enemy tonight, they retreat deeper into the woods and find a fine old tree, an immense Nairodha with 1,000 branches under which to rest. No sooner have their heads touched the ground after saying their evening prayers than Krip and Kritvarman are asleep. Ashwatthama cannot sleep. He lies under the tree, his eyes wide in the deepening twilight. His mind works feverishly, plotting revenge, but no plausible scheme rises into it, and he lies frustrated. The sun sinks below the Asta mountains, and night, mother of the universe, arrives. Ashwatthama's gaze ranges over the dense branches overhead, and he sees them adorned by so many crows' nests, like large fruit among the leaves. The dark birds have all come to roost for the night, and they are asleep. Ashwatthama's eyelids are growing heavy when he sees a flash of white wings in the darkness. It seems a shimmering spirit from another world has flown down into this one. Peering up intently, Ashwatthama sees it. It is no spirit that has alighted in the branches above him. It is an immense owl, and when he can see its head clearly, he sees it's a terrible bird. Its green eyes flash like cold lamps in the dark. Ashwatthama lies wrapped. He has the strangest feeling that the scene unfolding above him is an omen. Once it has flown down into the tree, the white owl gives the most chilling screech and attacks the sleeping crows. The owl is a blizzard of beak and talons. It seems to be everywhere in the tree at once. The poor crows hardly have time to awake before the marauding owl savages them, raked and bloody. Their black bodies fall dead out of the branches. The hunting owl brings such terror. And the crows are taken so unawares, they perish in the onslaught, hardly knowing what killed them. When it has killed all the crows, the owl pauses to clean its beak and claws against the bark of the tree. Its huge eyes glow like moon lenses in the night, and the warrior below clearly sees the glint of satisfaction in them. Ashwatthama wonders what the crows had done to the owl for it to wreak such revenge. The next moment, the great bird spreads its wings, and truly like an unearthly spirit, it flies off and is lost in the night. Suddenly, Ashwatthama knows what he must do. In a frenzy, he wakes the others. Thinking they are being attacked, they spring up, drawing their swords. It is only Ashwatthama trembling with excitement, burning in the night. Kripa says sleepily, "What has possessed you now, Ashwatthama? Go back to sleep, child." His nephew cries, "I cannot sleep. I know how to have revenge on the Pandavas." "What do you mean?" Ashwatthama's eyes gleam insanely. "We must kill them when they're asleep. We must attack them now when they don't expect us." Kritvarman and Krip gasp. Krip cries, "How can you even think such a thing?" A sovereign of the earth, a master of 11 Akshonis, lies dying by himself, his manhood shattered by cowardly Bhim. How else, uncle, do you suggest that we avenge him? The Pandavas have won this war with guile. Now we must also fight them with deceit. There is no other way. Krip says, "A warrior must be brave, but he must also be virtuous. You must remember, Duryodhana was no king of Dharma himself. He was greedy and ruthless. He humiliated the Pandavas. He cheated them out of everything they owned and banished them for 13 years. Still, they stood for peace until the last moment. But Duryodhana was unrelenting. We must not take his death out of its context or forget everything he did to the sons of Pandu. And as for the manner in which Bhim struck him down, it was only as he swore he would. Perhaps you are right that the Gadha Yudh was not sufficient to do it. That isn't cause enough for us to commit the crime you want." But Ashwatthama is adamant. "Was the way they killed my father, their guru Dharam? The time for Dharam has passed. This is the time for revenge. And we will seek revenge openly. We will challenge the Pandavas tomorrow and fight them to the death. That will be honorable and fate will smile on us. Yours is a dastardly plan, my son. I beg you, don't even think of such a sin." Ashwatthama is past listening to reason. "I have sworn to Duryodhana that I will kill the Pandavas. I am his Senapati now. This is the only way I can keep my word to him." Kripa says, "I am tired and I cannot think clearly. Let us seek Dhritarashtra's counsel, Queen Gandhari's, and the wise Vidurs before we do anything we might regret." Ashwatthama says, "I have made up my mind and I mean to do this thing tonight." A fearful smile touches his lips. It is their first night of rest after the war. The Pandavas will be asleep. They would have taken off their armor and be lost in dreams. They will never wake up again. Again, Krip says, "You are so tired and sad that you don't realize what you're saying. Sleep now, Ashwatthama. Tomorrow we will fight the Pandavas together." Sleep? How can a man who is in the grip of anger or desire, anxiety or sorrow, sleep? I am churned by all four. I will sleep only after I have killed the sons of Pandu. If you won't come with me, I will go alone. Farewell. He strides away towards his chariot. He has not gone 10 paces when Krip and Kritvarman cry after him, "Wait, we will come with you." They realize that it is later than they imagine. The Kali Yuga is upon them and the time for Dharam is past. They are all that remain of the Duryodhana's army. From now, they will have to act together. Whatever they did, or they would die. The last three warriors of Duryodhana's numberless legions ride in the pitched light to avenge their fallen king. The next chapter, the savage camp. Riding through the darkness across the Kurukshetra, the three warriors approach the Pandav camp. Ashwatthama lets Grip and Kritvarman down near the main gate. He says, "See, no one escapes this way." He rides off into the night. He means to find another way in. As he goes, the dark wind in his face, suddenly a Rakshas looms in his path. His 100 strangely beautiful eyes glowing red, around his waist, a tiger skin dripping fresh blood, and the skin of a black buck covering his radiant chest. A writhing serpent is his sacred thread, and his many arms hold aloft diverse weapons. Flames issue from his fanged maw. Ashwatthama loses a few arrows at the demon. The Rakshas yawns open his mouth and swallows those shafts. Ashwatthama summons the Rakshas Shakti. The apparition swallow that fiery missile as well. Leaping down from his chariot, Ashwatthama draws his sword, golden hafted and its blade the color of the sky. But it vanishes from his hand into the demon's body like a mongoose into its hole. So does the great mace he seizes up next. Ashwatthama thinks this is no ordinary Rakshas. It makes no move to come any nearer or to attack me. Drona's son folds his hands and stands on one foot. He prays to Shiva, by whose grace he was born. Abruptly, the Rakshas vanishes, and in its place a golden altar appears before the Brahman. In moments, all sorts of strange spirits materialize from that altar. Some have three heads, some no head at all, some are naked, pale phalluses erect, others wear tiger skin, some have three eyes, and others just one. Some have 4 and 5 arms, some have tails, some are minotaurian, others have bull's heads and men's limbs, and still others are indescribable, but they have no human feature or any bestial one. Many have the complexion of the lotus and they carry all kinds of weapons. Yet these weird beings do not threaten Ashwatthama in any way, only sing and dance wizardly before him. The Shiv Bhagat knows these extraordinary creatures are his lord's guns come to announce their master. The golden altar blazes up in flames. Bracing himself, Ashwatthama climbs the steps that lead to the Vedi. He cries, Lord, I offer myself to you. I am born in the line of Angiras, and I beg you to accept me as the Yajnapashu. And is about to step into the flames when a light illumines heaven and earth and Shiv stands before his devotee. The god wears deer skin. He is three-eyed, irradiant, and carries his trishul. Matted jata covers his head. The crescent moon peeps out from his top knot, and the Ganga glimmers there. Ashwatthama falls on his face to worship that vision. Shiv says, Krishna is my finest Bhagat, and so far I protected the Panchals for his sake. But the time of their lives has run out. Here, take this sword, Ashwatthama, and may your enemies perish. In a daze, Ashwatthama takes the shining sword from awesome Shankar, and the Lord vanishes. Just the ineffable fragrance of him lingers on the midnight air. Rising from where he knelt, Ashwatthama stalks into the Pandav camp, the sword, a long flame in his hand. To his right and left, unseen Rakshas march. He peers into the first tent he comes to in the dark, and dimly sees Drishtuman lying asleep on a white bed. On satin sheets scented with dhoop, Ashwatthama steals into the tent. For a moment he stands staring at the sleeping Panchal prince. His lips curl, his eyes blaze, and then with a screech like the hunting owls, he lashes out with a kick at his father's killer. Drishtuman is startled, awake, and Drona's son is at him. Drishtuman tries to get up, but Ashwatthama seizes his long hair, flings him down on the ground, begins to kick him relentlessly. In his stomach, his groin, his face, again and again, Drishtuman curls up in agony. In a flash, Ashwatthama rips the string from the Panchal's bow lying nearby. He plants his knees on Drishtuman's chest and, quick as rage, winds the bowstring around his throat and throttles him. Drishtuman's eyes bulge from his head. His tongue rolls out of his mouth. He grips his attacker's hands and manages to gasp, Don't kill me like this. Kill me with an arrow like a Kshatriya, or I won't reach Swarg. Ashwatthama's face is a mask, its eyes slit in hatred. Drona's son, the Panchal's boyhood friend, hisses, You killed your own guru. Swarg is not for men like you. I have come to send you to hell. You will be damned forever, and that is what you deserve. Still throttling him with the bowstring, Ashwatthama drags Drishtuman around the tent, kicking him, killing him in the most brutal way. Long after life has left the fire prince's body, Ashwatthama continues to savage his corpse. At last he stands panting above the dead Drishtaman, and his eyes gleam in satisfaction. Ashwatthama takes up Shiva's sword. He had sat down so he could kill that Kshatriya with his bare hands. Now he goes to the rest of the Pandav camp as the white owl did among the sleeping crows. Ashwatthama slaughters the other Panchals, Shikhandi, and his brothers. He comes to another tent and sees Draupadi's sons asleep. They are hardly more than children. The Brahman enters stealthily and covering their mouths so they did not cry out. He cuts their throats or plunges his sword into their hearts, killing them before they awake. He finds Yudhmanu and Utmamojas and kills them. Meanwhile, Krip and Kritvarman have set fire to the camp from three sides, and the tents blaze up like yagya flames in the dark. Roused by terrified screams in the feral night, the other sleeping soldiers wake up and try to run from the Rakshas attacking them at the midnight hour. Like Yamaduts, death's messengers, Krip and Kritvarman cut them down at the only gate. Ashwatthama stalks that camp like a Yam himself. His roars down the screams of those he murders with Shiva's sword, flashing like a moon sliver in his hand. Drona's son attacks the elephants and horses that stampede through the camp, felling them at will, and is drenched in their innocent blood. Winning and trumpeting in terror, those beasts plump away from the demented avenger, and on their pain-stricken careen, they trample 100 Pandav soldiers who try to escape Drona's dreadful son. Soon the three Kaurav warriors meet again at the gate. Lit by the flames of the burning camp, their faces are wet with blood. Their mission is accomplished. Their macabre sacrifice is complete. Every man in the Pandav camp is dead, and most of their beasts. Scavengers descend on the camp and begin to feast. Rakshas and Pisach arrive to quaff the flowing blood, gorging on flesh, fat, and sucking marrow out of the bones of the corpses. They dance in joy. Drunk with murder, Ashwatthama, Krip, and Kritvarman embrace each other, roaring at the stars. They climb into the waiting chariot and ride back to Spant Panchak like an evil three-headed wind. Duryodhan lies alone where he fell. He keeps his mace close beside him because the night has flowered with 100 baleful eyes. The jackal and hyena packs have discovered him, and every moment they pad closer. He roars and screeches at them, and they retreat. But in a few moments, they come snuffling forward again, and low growls, and the hyenas mad cackling. The pain in Duryodhan's lions threatens to make him faint at any moment, and he knows that will be the end. The scavengers will tear him apart. Then the animal eyes vanish as if by magic. It takes the Kaurav a few moments longer than it has the jackals and hyenas to hear horses flying towards them through the night, bearing Ashwatthama and his army of two. Even before they stop and alight, Duryodhan senses their excitement. Next moment, the three are at his side. He sees they are covered in blood and their eyes shine. Smiling, Krip says, "My lord, I see you mean to take your Gada with you into Devlok, a friend who remained faithful to the last." Ashwatthama takes his king's hand fervently and cries, "I did not fail you, Duryodhan. I killed all your enemies tonight. The Panchals and the Drishtyuman are dead. Draupadi's sons are slain. What remained of the Pandav's army is dead. Their camp burned to the ground. But I did not find Yudhishthir and his brothers there, and I did not find Satyaki or Krishna. Of the two forces that faced each other on Kurukshetra, my lord, from your army, just Acharya Krip, Kritvarman, and I still live. And from the enemies, only the 5 Pandavas, Krishna, and Satyaki." By now, Duryodhan is gasping for his last breath. A faint smile touches his lips, and there is a glitter of triumph in his hooded eyes. He manages to whisper to his final Senapati, "Ashwatthama, you have done what Bhishma, Drona, and Karan could not. I am proud of you. May God bless you. Duryodhana's eyes are full of death, and his three warriors hold his hands tightly. Their king breathes, I am going now, my friends. We will meet again in Swarg. Then he has gone, and peace suffuses his dead face. At last, the tumult and anguish of that great and terrible life have ended. One by one, his warriors embrace their dead king, and their hearts full, they walk away from him. Once more, the night sprouts hungry eyes as the scavenger packs arrive for their feast. But then unearthly protection is upon Duryodhan's corpse. It begins to glow so eerily in the dark that the scavengers back away from it and run yelping into the night. It is told that the moment life left Duryodhan's body, Sanjay's eyes lost the miraculous sight with which they had been blessed, so he could relate the events of the war of Dharma to Dhritarashtra. The most terrible morning of the Pandavs' lives dawns. They are roused by a man who comes howling to the tree under which they spent the night. It is Drishdyumn's Sarathi, the only one to have escaped Ashwathama's carnage, by pretending to be dead. He cries to Yudhishthir, they are all dead, my lord. Ashwathama killed them in the night. Your sons are slain, the Panchals are killed, my lord Shikandi and Drishdyumn have been murdered. Yudhishthir falls where he stands, and Satyaki catches him. For a moment, the other Pandavas stand turned to stone. It is the hour of atonement, for they too have killed thousands of Kurukshetra. Shock rages through their bodies, maddening them, and mercifully, each one of them faints. Even Krishna seems shaken. When Yudhishthir revives, in a low voice, he says, we have been vanquished in our victory. He tells Nakul, go and fetch Draupadi. They ride to the camp and see the desolation Ashwathama had made of it. Ashes everywhere and bloody corpses, their faces peaceless even in death. Because they died so horribly, they see their sons lying side by side, some still on the charred remains of their bed, others having fallen off when Ashwathama killed them in their sleep. But the sight Yudhishthir can bear least is of Drishdyumna, strangled, his swollen tongue protruding lewdly from his lips, his eyes staring in terror, his body and face covered in purple welts. This was how the splendid fire prince had died at last, the Kshatriya who had been their Senapati since the war began, without whom they could have never won the Dharam Yuddha. Yudhishthir begins to sob. Satyaki and Bhim sit mutely beside their friends' mangled corpse. Arjun walks around the horrific camp. When he sees the corpses of Utmojas and Yudhmanyu, who rode at his chariot wheels all these days, he breaks down. They hear the sound of a chariot driving up. Nakul has returned from Draupadi. The Pandavas stand helpless as Panchali is helped down from the chariot. She takes a few hesitant steps, then sees her sons and collapses. When she regains her senses, hysteria has its way with her. Her screams ring through the tragic morning. She beats her breast, tears her hair, and cries out her sons' names, her murdered brothers' names. She screams at Yudhishthir, are you content now that you have won the earth by sacrificing your sons? She falls across the body of each of her boys, kissing their faces, touching their wounds that smear her in dried blood, like sacramental kumkum, and whimpering like a wild mother that has lost her young. Then suddenly she grows ominously quiet, like a cobra uncoiling, she rises. She says to Yudhishthir, I will not eat again until Ashwathama is killed. I will die in this place. She sits down again, and her husbands know she means to do exactly what she has said. Yudhishthir tries to pacify her. Your brothers and your sons died heroes, and they have found swarg for themselves. How can you sit here in Paryopavesha, Panchali? Ashwathama has escaped into the jungle. Who can tell when we will find him? I want revenge for my sons and my brothers, or I will die here. Yudhishthir cries, even if we do find Ashwathama and kill him now, how will you believe we have. He wears a red jewel on his head. Bring me that stone, and I will be content. Losing it will be worse than death for him. Yet again, she turns to her husband. She relies on whenever there is violence to be done, the one she can most easily persuade. She turns to Bhim and says, Bhim, my love, you are the only one who will help me. You must do this for me. That is all it takes. Bhim swells up. His eyes turn red and he cries, I will bring you the jewel. Nakul, come with me, be my Sarthi. Bhim sets out to find Ashwathama. Yudhishthir sits near Draupadi. He puts his arm around her and does his best to comfort her. She sobs against his chest. Krishna says, Ashwathama has the Brahm Shirsha. He has left Dharam behind him and he will stop at nothing anymore. If he uses that Astra, Bhim will not live. Drone once gave that Brahmashirsh to Arjuna, but he did not trust Ashwathama with it, for it can make ashes of the earth in its 4 fires. But Ashwathama did not stop begging Drone, and at last the father relented and gave his son the Astra too. I can never forget how Ashwathama flattered me once for a whole morning, and I wondered where his flattery was leading. In a while, he asked me for the Sudarshan Chakra. Bhim doesn't know Ashwathama has the Brahm Shirs. Arjun, come with me. We must go after him. They climb into the Krishan's Jatra and set out. When they are out of the other side, Krishan says to his Sarthi, Darut, fly. The wonderful horses take to the air and rise above the trees. With unerring instinct, they fly straight to where Bhim has already found Ashwathama, who is with Vyas and some other rishis on the banks of Ganga. So next week we'll see how Ashwathama, what happens to him. Ashwathama's jewel, that is the title of the next chapter. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.